name is Mitros, and I'm going to speak about the First Council of Nicaea. The First Council of Nicaea was a meeting of Christian bishops that convened in the ancient Greek city of Nicaea in northwestern Anatolia, also known as Asia Minor. This is the geographical area that makes up the majority of modern-day Turkey. The First Council was at the summons of the Roman Emperor Constantine in AD 325 and was formally opened in the month of May in a central structure of the imperial palace at Nicaea. However, the emperor did not arrive until almost a month later on June 14th. The council ended on July 25th with a celebration of the emperor's 20th anniversary. This ecumenical council was a first effort to attain a consensus in the church through an assembly with representation present from all of Christendom. When Constantine finally arrived, he informed everyone of how averse he was to dogmatic controversy, that he just wanted the church to live in harmony and peace. The way Constantine orchestrated the council was brilliant. He seized the initiative from the Eastern bishops who had previously called a smaller council. The purpose of that council was to excommunicate heretics who did not believe in the full divinity of Jesus. The bishop, Poggius of Cordoba, led that smaller council earlier in the year in the Easter season. It had been charged with the investigation of the troubles brought about by the Arian controversy in the Greek-speaking East. Arianism was a doctrine that held that Christ was not divine, but was a created being. To most bishops, the teachings of Arius were heretical and dangerous to the salvation of souls. That first council proved inconclusive, so the bishops of all provinces were summoned to the city of Nicaea. The location was reasonably accessible to many of the delegates, particularly those of Asia Minor, Georgia, Armenia, Syria, Egypt, and Greece. Not so coincidentally, the venue was only a few miles from the imperial palace. Now would be a good time to share a bit of background information with you to fully illustrate Emperor Constantine's motives. Constantine was certainly no humble follower of Jesus. There were other reasons for his courting of Christianity. His desire was for unity, not confrontation, and moving the council to Nicaea brought it under his control. He convened this first general council of the Christian church at Nicaea almost immediately after uniting the empire under himself. Having seen human gods like Diocletian fail as a binding force for the empire, and noting the wide appeal of Christianity and the futility of Diocletian's attempts to persecute it, Constantine was determined to use Christianity as the glue to hold his empire together. His desire was to ensure that at the council, the precise nature of Christian faith was negotiated and its relationship to Constantine and his successors established. Who attended the council? Constantine had invited all 1,800 bishops of the Christian church within the Roman Empire, about 1,000 in the east and 800 in the west. But accounts differ on the total number of those who attended or sent representation, from 217 to more than 300. But the historically agreed upon number is 318. But these 318 bishops did not travel alone. Each one had permission to bring with him 2 priests and 3 deacons, so the total number of attendees could have well been more than 1,800. Eastern bishops included 22 from Syria, 19 from Palestine, 10 from Phoenicia, 6 from Arabia, and others from Assyria, Mesopotamia, and Persia. The Eastern bishops formed the great majority of the delegates. Most notably in attendance were Alexander of Alexandria and Eustathius of Antioch, who were the patriarchs of the assembly. A young deacon and companion of Bishop Alexander, Athanasius of Alexandria, was among the assistants. He eventually spent most of his life battling against Arianism. Delegates came from every region of the Roman Empire, including Britain, and from the Christian churches within the Empire of Iranians, or known the New Persian Empire. The Latin-speaking provinces sent at least 5 representatives. Other remarkable attendees included Eusebius of Caesarea, who was the first purported church historian, and Nicholas of Myra. His life was the seat of the Santa Claus legends. Leontius of Caesarea and Meletius of Sistopolis were also in attendance. One of the delegates was Spiridion Tremedius, who even as a bishop made his living as a shepherd. The supporters of Arius, who all hailed from the Libya Pentapolis, included Secundus, the bishop of Ptolemy and patron of Arius, and Theonas of Marmarica. Other pro-Arianism supporters included Eusebius of Nicomedia and Paulinius of Tyrus. Theonas and Secundus were the only bishops at the council who refused to accept its decree or sign the Nicene Creed, a position for which they were excommunicated, deposed of position, and sent into exile. Secundus later recovered his diocese as part of Constantine the Great's attempts at reconciliation. The agenda. The agenda of the council included the Arian question regarding the relationship between God the Father and the Son, the date of celebration of Easter, the Meletian Schism, and various matters of church discipline, which resulted in an estimated 20 new church laws or canons that covered everything from the organizational structure of the church to the readmission to the church of heretics and schismatics, including those of when reordination and or rebaptism were to be required. Also liturgical practice, including the place of deacons and the practice of standing at prayer during liturgy. The first order of business was the Arian question. The Arian question disputed the relationship between God the Father and the Son, not only in his incarnate form as Jesus, but also in his nature before the creation of the world. Are the Father and the Son one in divine purpose only, or also one in being? The Nicene Creed was adopted to resolve the Arian controversy, whose leader, Arius, objected to the Bishop Alexander's apparent carelessness in blurring the lines of nature between the Father and the Son by his emphasis on eternal generation. In reply, Alexander accused Arius of denying the divinity of the Son and of being too Jewish and Greek in his thought. Who was Arius? He was a Libyan priest in Bacchus in Alexandria, Egypt. He was described as sophisticated, austere, and grim. He adhered to a strict Egyptian sect that refused to associate with sinners or any Christians who associated with them. In 318, around the time he was given a church, he built quite a following that included more than 700 consecrated virgins and many wealthy widows. He believed and preached that, and I'm paraphrasing, God is one, and that if one is unique, then Jesus cannot also be God. To continue, that Jesus is the only begotten one, that God made him first to create the other creatures. That Jesus served as an instrument, a brush in the hand of the divine artist, so to speak. That God is undefined in creation, but that Jesus is finite and created. And that God is transcendent, that no one can know him as he is. Jesus knew God by virtue of grace, by his adoption. Arius explained it like this. There are 3 distinct entities. God is the one true God, but the Son and the Spirit are creatures like his angels. Arius' success in dividing the leaders of the church made the chance of a formal schism a very real possibility. So Alexander and his supporters created the Nicene Creed to clarify the key tenets of the Christian faith in response to the widespread adoption of an Arius doctrine. This was subsequently marked as heresy. The Nicene Creed expressed what the early leaders of the church found to be biblical, traditional, and orthodox in their Christian faith. The Creed does not directly quote Scripture, but it is based on biblical truths. It did not become a part of the Mass until the early 6th century. Of the next agenda items, the date of the celebration of Easter was discussed. Besides the Creed, the Council decided that the date for Easter should be calculated uniformly and separate from the Jewish calendar, using the lunar calendar instead. In actuality, it took centuries for the calculations to be worked out in practice, and disagreement over the date calculations remain even today between Catholics in the West and the Orthodox in the East. Also on the agenda was the issue of the Meletian Schism. Meletius was bishop of Nicaea in Egypt. He is mainly known as the founder and namesake of the Meletians, circa 305. The Meletians is one of several schismatic sects in early church history that were concerned about the ease with which Latin Christians re-entered the church. This group went by the name Church of the Martyrs, inherently objecting to the re-acceptance by other bishops of people who chose to avoid the risk of martyrdom. Meletius' influence extended into Palestine. It is believed by some that he had ordained Arius as a priest. Lastly, the agenda item that addressed various items of church discipline resulted in the new church laws, also called canons. The 20 new canons established as listed in the Nicene and post-Nicene doctrines are: number 1, the prohibition of self-castration for clergy, the establishment of a minimum term for catechumens, those persons studying for baptism, the prohibition of the presence in the house of a cleric of a younger woman who might bring him under suspicion, the ordination of a bishop in the presence of at least 3 provincial bishops, and confirmation by the metropolitan bishop. The provision for 2 provincial synods to be held annually. The confirmation of ancient customs giving jurisdiction over large regions to the bishops of Alexandria, Rome, and Antioch. The recognition of the honorary rights of the See of Jerusalem, and a provision for agreement with the Novatianists, another early sect. To continue, they also addressed the provision for mild procedure against the lapsed during the persecutions under Licinius, and the prohibition of the removal of priests, and the prohibition of usury among the clergy. A precedence of bishops and presbyters before deacons in receiving the Eucharist, Holy Communion, the declaration of the invalidity of baptism by Pauline heretics, and finally, the prohibition of kneeling on Sundays and during the Pentecost. Standing was a normative posture for prayer at this time, as it still is among the Eastern Christians. In summary, the long-term effects of the Council of Nicaea were significant. For the first time, leaders of the church convened to agree on a doctrinal statement. In the short term, however, the council did not stamp out the heresy it was convened to discuss, and upheaval continued for some time, even after Arius himself died, which itself is an interesting story and an apropos conclusion to this session. It was only a few years after the Council of Nicaea that Arius returned to Constantinople and asked to be admitted to the church. But Arius did not renounce his heresy, so the church refused. The Emperor Constantine intervened in the dispute and set a date for Arius to attend Mass and be readmitted to communion. Oddly enough, while he was waiting for Constantine to arrive so he could go into Mass, Arius stopped to relieve himself, and while doing so, his bowels burst out of his body and he died instantly. Truly, the Council of Nicaea was guided by the hand of God.